So how has reading books changed my life? Now, we are all well aware that knowledge is power, but it is through the action which actually makes the change. You can know all the world's secrets, but we must also know that if we don't take action, nothing will truly happen. Being said, I've always struggled with reading. I've never been good at reading, and it is something I've always pushed off and tried to find alternate ways to learn. Now, luckily, there's this thing called YouTube that came out, but it came out way later into my adult years. And so I found other means necessary. I even read comic books. I did essentially whatever it took. But I realized that if I actually could concentrate, that I would be able to attain a lot of the knowledge that I had read. Even still, I had went through tech school, I had been through college, and it was never quite the same. It wasn't never a subject that I truly enjoyed. Yes, I did college and I did computer science, something I did really enjoy. But it is ultimately having the passion for wanting to learn something. And I think one of the biggest things that we tend to forget is we feel once school is done that our knowledge is set. We don't need any more knowledge. We just kind of throw learning to the side. And when we read, it is essentially to read the news, or perhaps to read subtitles on movies, or possibly even a particular book of interest that is fiction of sorts. But being said, for me, I have always wanted to achieve more. And a lot of different times, even having YouTube nowadays, even having other things, I would be able to get more knowledge than I was ever exposed to. But it wasn't until I actually started to read books, obtain books that have knowledge in it that a lot of people just aren't aware of, a lot of perspective, a lot of different tools and techniques that have helped me essentially reform my life and change my life dramatically. But ultimately understanding it started with reading about building my body. I wanted to be a bodybuilder, so I used to read cover to cover I think every muscle development magazine out there. That used to be my favorite bodybuilding magazine, and that was the one thing I used to always read for certain. Yes, I had the subscription. I used to read it when I come in. That was my reading material. Being said, in my later years, having YouTube and all these other things, yes, they help, but ultimately, I understand that there's a lot of information in books that is not on videos yet, that is not on, yes, you can look up the internet and read about it, but a lot of different stuff comes from books. It comes from people that have really lived experiences and had great knowledge. It hasn't been fully transferred over to something like a YouTube, right? Like most people just go to YouTube and try to learn stuff there. They don't do any additional things, or perhaps they haven't actually gone out and again try to expand their education from where it is. And yes, school is great, but I think ultimately, doing some actual self-development books really do a lot. And yes, I think a lot of different self-development, a lot of things are repetitive in nature. But being said, is sometimes it takes those repetitive things in a different perspective, in words said differently, that allow you to get it. And that's what matters, is finding something that you can relate to and actually being able to transfer, again, that knowledge to something that you are trying to make a change in. So I've learned about many different things, about breathing techniques, about meditation, about finances, right, as far as investments and the investment side of the house, and learning about crypto and learning about all these other things that I have real true passion for in my life, but are things I wouldn't know about. Even the plant-based diet are things I wouldn't know about unless I actually did my research on and actually just didn't read headlines and assume something was something specifically, and let my beliefs overpower my thoughts and ideas about something I was curious about. And so I followed up and I did the readings on it. And the nice thing is too, is now we have Audible, right? It's another big one where you listen to audiobooks and you can listen to them at like 5 times faster. I think there's actually another one out there that kind of condenses these particular books down to essentially like cliff notes. You get the information quicker. And something I think a lot of people need to be aware of, there's been some big historical figures that actually did this, that actually went out and essentially read cliff notes. They would have people, Rockefeller is a good example of this. Rockefeller actually hired people to read multiple books and obtain essentially just the knowledge, the points of that book, and relay it to him, because knowledge was power and he knew this, but he wanted to help essentially make the best of his time. So that's why he hired people to do it. But also being said, this is why things like Audible and reading or listening to something at 10 times faster is extremely important, because the quicker and faster you can get knowledge, which is essentially all about this day. And so reading makes it hard, but it is definitely worth it, and definitely something I've found that has provided me more value than something like on YouTube. Yes, YouTube is a great tool and it has great information on it, but I think you can go even deeper and get more perspectives and stuff that, again, is not out there, that you wouldn't see typically. And so for myself, I've always read throughout the years, but over the past like 4 or 5 years, I'd probably say about 5 years now, I have really hammered down on reading anywhere between like 40 to 60 books a year. Now, before that point, I was like the average person. I'd read maybe 1 or 2 books a year, but doing this has really changed things dramatically. Like I've said, it's really allowed me to see things differently. It's really allowed me to obtain knowledge that I wouldn't have otherwise had, and being able to apply it and getting new perspectives. Because a lot of times, yes, most self-help books are the same, but again, there's different perspectives, and there are some books out there that do give you new tools and techniques and thoughts and ideas, and it's about experimenting with those different things and realizing that you can achieve things through reading. And a lot of times we feel like we're being left behind, but it is up to us, right? It is solely our responsibility to go out and obtain the knowledge. It is nobody else's responsibility. You're not going to be able to retain the stuff through someone else. You have to do the reading yourself. You have to, whether that's reading a hardcover book or listening to an audible, right? It is what is important. And for myself, I do both. I do read on my Kindle, or I either do that or I listen on a book. Typically it's on a book because I'm in a car or I'm doing multiple different things, and whenever I have downtime, I try to listen to it. It's not saying I always do that. Majority of the time I do. I go through essentially cycles where I listen to a lot of books, I read a lot of books, or perhaps I just start listening to music and I read just frequently throughout the week. But being said, books are key to where you want to get. A lot of times we do not know where to start because we don't know. But if you can attain knowledge through a book, right? There are tons of good books out there that will teach you some guidelines. Now you have to understand that even though it teaches you guidelines, it's not going to give you the step-by-step. Nothing is going to give you the step-by-step, and you have to understand why, because every experience is completely different. Yes, guidelines do help. They do provide you stepping stones, but you have to ultimately understand that you're going to have to do a lot of tweaking along the way, that you're going to actually have to apply experiments in the repetition on doing these different things that allow you to gain the knowledge to be able to make dramatic changes in your life. And again, if you're not giving that extra effort, you will never see what you are capable of obtaining. And again, you don't want to get stuck in a cycle to where you're only reading, because yes, it feels great, like you're obtaining just knowledge, but you still need to work on the execution part and make sure that that is a daily habit, that you're actually executing on these daily things. Everything that you're learning, you want to apply, whether you're teaching someone right back, right? Or perhaps start a YouTube channel and start teaching people on the stuff that you're learning, right? So you can solidify that stuff and then put it into action and start actually using the knowledge that you have, because having tons of knowledge isn't going to do you any good unless you actually start taking the action with it. So being said, if you have made it this far, remember to hit the like button because it does help the algo. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.